morning and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today's virtual conference. My name is Divya Som and I am your host for today. Bradstreet India, in association with AWS and MoEngage, is glad to present this virtual conference on the theme Intelligent Engagement Strategies for Enhanced Customer Experience. Before we begin, I request everyone to please take a moment and go through the guidelines that have been displayed on your screen. We encourage you to ask more questions in the session. We request you to please type your queries in the question section. These will be taken up in the Q&A session after the panel discussion. You can use the chat section for sharing your views. A couple of tips here. We want to know you more, hence please mention your name and company name whenever you post your question. You can also mention the person you are directing the question to. As you can now see on your screens, there is a Q&A box and a chat box that will help you converse better with the speakers and the moderator. Now let's take a quick look at the flow of today's session. Please refer to the agenda displayed on your screen right now. We would have the context setting by Ms. Aditi Garg, who would also moderate the panel discussions on intelligent engagement strategies for enhanced customer experience. Our esteemed panelists include Ms. Shweta Aggarwall from State Bank of India, Mr. Raveesh Bhatnagar from IndusInd Bank, Mr. Praveen Sridhar from Amazon Internet Services India Private Limited, and Mr. Sanjay Prasad from MoEngage Inc. Well, a promising agenda with an eminent lineup of speakers. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome and thank everyone for being part of this virtual session today. Let's move to the most awaited knowledge sharing and interactive session, the panel discussion. Today's discussion is around the topic, intelligent engagement strategies for enhanced customer experience. We have some very interesting names here. As I mentioned, the session will be moderated by Ms. Aditi Garg, founder Research Shows. Our first panelist is Ms. Shweta Aggarwall, Chief Marketing Officer, State Bank of India. Thank you, Ms. Shweta, for joining us. Our next speaker is Mr. Raveesh Bhatnagar, Head of Digital Banking, IndusInd Bank. Thank you, Mr. Bhatnagar, for joining us. We also have with us Mr. Praveen Sridhar, Head ISV Segment, Amazon Internet Services India Private Limited. Thank you, Mr. Sridhar, for joining us. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Sanjay Prasad, Head BFSI India and MEA MoEngage Inc. Thank you, Mr. Prasad, for joining us. We will be beginning the panel discussion in some time from now. Before that, may I please welcome Ms. Aditi to address today's audience.
Thanks, Divya. That was a very nice introduction to all of our esteemed panelists and me, and thank you for that. Welcome to all our delegates and attendees. Today's discussion is around a very interesting topic. BFSI as a sector has generally been very functional in nature. Consumers have always been used to whatever the banking or whatever the financial services, whatever services were given to them, consumers generally accepted them. And then the consumer expectations were very different of a BFSI brand or any brand in that sector. But over the last few years, technology has really changed consumer expectations. There's been a halo effect of what a consumer expects from any brand now, with all the e-commerce players coming in, with everything accessible with a click, with your fintech players coming in and revolutionizing the entire payment space. Now, right from the way a consumer searches for something, to the way he buys it, the way he bonds in an after-sales service, or the way he even seeks customer service has changed. And with that, somehow the BFSI sector has been at the other end of it, where they've had to adapt very quickly to the way the consumer has evolved. So here you have an interesting trend where the consumer has actually evolved and the category is playing a catch-up game. And at the same end, you also have a very interesting play where marketing has suddenly become way more efficient. You have a lot of automation which has come into the sector, not just BFSI, but others. And it has made it so much more efficient in terms of your consumers how you interact with them, the advent of chatbots, and all of those new technologies, which have just brought about so much more efficiency, the way what a consumer can do, the choices to the consumers are so many between the different brands. So a traditional sector like BFSI, which relied on transparency, trust, reliability, somehow they see that now the consumer expects much more than that. There are a lot more emotional hooks the consumer is looking for beyond just that. So I think I would like to start with really where everything starts from, the consumer. And let's try and understand from Raveesh. Raveesh, hello? That how, Raveesh. Yeah, how he really sees the consumer and the way brands have, the way digital has shaped the consumer and their expectations in the BFSI segment. So Raveesh.
Sure. So hi everyone. I think just to start off, I think nowadays the way the world is changing, I think for all the brands, right, whether it is the FMCG brands, whether it is BFSI brands, I think at least my belief is that what and how I can deliver value to the consumer is by being a relevant app on their screens. So as long as the consumer actually uses me effectively, interacts with my whether it is app, by the way, whether it is a website, whether it is net banking, it's an omni-channel world, right? So
Correct,
at the end of the day, I'm actually one icon, right? And now it is up to me as a brand to be relevant to them, and I want them to be using me in as much way possible, interact with me, take services. I think in the digital world, that's what the idea is at the end of the day. Just to maybe elucidate the point slightly further, I think I'll just talk about how banks have, adapted to it. As Aditi have rightly said, I think banks have Amazons, the Flipkarts of the world have actually, changed the way a consumer feel, right? So they would expect the same kind of service from any bank or a telecom, agency that they are onboarded with. So the entire service perception has changed because of certain brands, and obviously the banks have to play catch up now. How well do we play catch up? How well do we adopt the fast follower strategy? I think that's will determine how successful we are, right? And the example that I wanted to talk about was, for example, I was going to my rural network and we were trying to devise something. All our urban in India population were able to get, for example, account statement on email, right? And we were very happy when we actually delivered that service to them, right? And what we innovated was that we also then added this service on WhatsApp. So now on a WhatsApp, which by the way 400 million users are using, I am able to do account statement. I can put in a request and it will land up on my email ID. But when I went to rural India, a lot of them don't have email IDs, right?
Okay.
So we had to actually then innovate and try and figure out that how in a keeping in mind the privacy and security, can we deliver the same account statement, maybe in an encrypted manner on the WhatsApp channel itself, right? So that they have access to it there. Right? They want to look at it. And this is semi-urban India, this is rural India, but banks have to adopt, right? That's what we need to do.
Okay. So Shweta, are you there? Shweta? Can I get some of your perspectives on it? Because SBI being such a big bank with such diverse set of consumers, like Raveesh said, he started this statements on WhatsApp. What was your big innovation which you did when you saw changing trends in consumer behavior?
Aditi, the one thing which is very predominant when it comes to a consumer psychology is they prefer a physical touch at every moment.
Correct.
How we consume movies, we got into transformation, we did a lot of disruptions in the digital world using digital movies, using digital music. But the challenge is physical touch is always important. So what step we have taken this, we've taken the digital on the physical ground. We have implemented branches, which is digitized branches. So it's in a pilot stage as so far as of now. But those branches wherein it's a minimum staff, everything's done via digital. Whether you want to print up a passport, you want to know details, there's a digital lounge that we can sit and interact about other opportunities of banking services. So this is how we're trying to build a bridge between the physical and the digital world. We're trying to create more of an omni-channel presence wherein what you see physically, it's also present digitally. What you see digitally is also present physically. So that is the transitions is what we are working towards. And going forward, definitely we'll see more of such things coming in, not only from us, but definitely across all the players in the market. Even if you look at more moving forward in the customer service space, I was reading a case recently about one of the global banks. They've moved ahead and they've customized a video call center. So now a call center is no more an RVI driven or just an audio driven. You will interacting with a person across via virtual screens. You can express your emotions. You can express whatever you want via video screen. So the world is actually moving beyond a video KYC process also, and making each and every touch point a virtual driven touch points.
Okay. Okay, Shweta. Thanks, Shweta. That was very interesting to see both the perspective of IndusInd and SBI, both Raveesh and you. I think there is a poll where everyone's supposed to take right now. Divya?
Aditi, we'll be launching a poll.
Okay.
Requesting all our attendees to kindly take the same.
Okay.
Requesting our panelists as well to participate in the poll.
Okay.
Well, the question is, what is the biggest challenge you face in user engagement efforts? In line with our discussion today, we're just checking with our attendees which of these options they align with, and it will just help us make this interaction a two-way communication. It's a 1-minute poll and another 30 seconds, requesting our panelists as well to take the same. All right, another 20 seconds and we'll have the results on the screen, which will help us understand today's audience much better. Another 5 seconds. Yes, and thank you. Thank you for your responses, everyone. Can we have the results, please? All right. Aditi, over to you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So I'll carry on with the panel discussion, Divya, then? Okay.
Yes.
Sure. Thanks. Okay. So as Raveesh said, and as Divya said, as Shweta said, very interestingly, SBI is trying to integrate both the physical and the virtual worlds and trying to cater to all kinds of consumers and their different things. But Sanjay, is Sanjay there? Sanjay, I think I would like to take a perspective from you. This is what we heard from the BFSI brands and what they're doing. But given that you come from a more macro perspective of different sectors and a bigger, broader perspective, how do you see the major challenges that are from the viewpoint of a marketer in the BFSI industry? And how do you think automation has really helped them?
Yeah. Hey, first, thanks, Aditi, and a warm welcome to all my panelist members. So, Aditi, I think so. You all really set the tone. You all really set the ground, saying that customers are having new expectations, and the Flipkarts and Amazons, for that matter, I'll say Ola, big baskets of the world. They have set some new heights and new expectations of what exactly is this customer experience. Now, and this, what we mean by this is, intuitiveness, seamlessness, straightforward omni-channel experience expected by the customer. And the moment such expectation is coming by customers, even into the BFSI field, means it's straight away, it percolates into a challenge to the marketers. And talking about these kind of intuitive experience means digitization, where digitization becomes one of the key. So let me break my answer into kind of 4 points. First is, now as we have been listening from Shweta and Raveesh, it's like where Raveesh is emphasizing on digital banking and things like that, and Shweta about the physical touch. Even their is now moving into the physical branch. I'll say balanced model. So moving from branch banking to digital banking means we are speaking of, Raveesh was speaking about mobile banking. He said mobile first. He said like Today we are all an app. It's how relevant this app is. What he said. He started with app, then he moved to website and net banking. So even if we are speaking of internet banking and mobile banking, now today if we see the penetration of mobile, today if we see the cost at which data is available, so mobile first has become the approach. And talking of statistics, I'll say, like, even in 2018 itself, RBI had said that the mobile banking usage now has moved to 251 million. So we are speaking, so many users even way back in 2018. I'm sure Raveesh and Shweta will back up with numbers. What is it today? So this brings first challenge for the BFSI sector, to the marketers. This is how do I, ensure that more and more customers of mine are downloading these apps, or moving to the digital engagement strategy. And after downloading, how are they adopting? In the sense, can I go ahead and create an omni-channel journey for these customers? Say if they become a digital account customer or a standard, saving account customer. What kind of omni-channel journey I create for them so that they are aware about, this as one of the key methods of engagement, and once they've downloaded, then they start adopting at least the basic services, be it in as Ravish was saying, be it like account balance, things like that, fund transfer, utility payment, how can they start using this basic services in the app, which moves them away from their banking into banking on the app or banking on the fingertips itself. And in fact, and in fact, if one of the BI studies says that 97% of millennials indicated that they heavily use mobile banking itself, which helps them kind of to stay on top of their finances and alerts and bill spends and things like that. This was challenge number one, which I see for marketers. Challenge number two, while I'm moving them more towards a digital engagement, strategy or channels, how is it I can keep them engaged? Now, this brings us to the concept of holy grail of marketing, which is like right time, right message, right person, and the right channels. So this has become a challenge for marketers. How do they do this? How do they, have a continuous engagement? And this is not possible unless and until there's an adaptation of the right technology. When, like a technology which is say agile, flexible, and again backing up Ravish, which is like mobile first. A technology which has the capability enough to provide this omni-channel experience with Amazon. Sorry, with your mobile first. And when you are speaking about, matching the experience of Amazon, big baskets, sooner or later you have to focus in this area the way they are kind of doing it, having a seamless technology on the back end to be able to meet this challenges. Now, like as I said, 4 aspects. The third aspect, which is very important, is analytics and AI.
Okay.
Today, if you see, banks are having plethora of products. This is one side of the story. Second side of the story is customers are again having increasing requirements. So while banks have all their assets and liability products, over and above that, banks are coming up with this co-branded offers. Co-branded offers, say maybe food and restaurant, hotel, travel, retail, and whatnot. And the other side, customers are looking for the best deals. They're doing their searches, they're doing Google and whatnot. They're coming to the bank's websites, and I think they're leaving good amount of digital footprints. So how are marketers, like Shweta and Ravish, being able to use this behavior pattern?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Understand, the usage pattern. Now, if I mix this with history, of these customers, now this becomes a challenge for marketer to be able to analyze this data, quickly create segments of this data, and then do this hyper personalized, it can be a recommendation, it can be offered to the right segment. So this can be your pre-approved loans. This can be your, EMI options for consumer durables, can be credit card outstanding and whatnot, and the classical cross-sell upsell. And in doing this, how can, these marketers use AI, can I use machine learning to be able to help me that, hey, what will be the best time to nudge this customer with this offer and not irritate him by, reaching out to him at the wrong time? Or what is the best content, which makes more sense? Or which is the best path for this conversion? Is it that, the moment he is doing some, leaving back a digital footprint, should I call him and irritate? Or should be a systematic sequential
Got
nudge
it.
where maybe,
Yes. So nudge versus poke. How much of it should be
exactly.
a soft nudge, and how
Correct.
much of it is that the consumer feels I'm being poked? So with that
And
thought,
sure.
Sanjay, if you mind, can I just take Praveen's perspective also? Praveen?
Yeah, thanks, Aditi.
Sanjay has just built for us a very nice perspective on the technology aspect and how I think banks and all can really implement, use, collect data. But I just thought I'll take your perspectives on this on one, and I might be going a little off, but I'm just tempted to ask, how do you think in India, where are we with all the thoughts that Sanjay said in terms of what banks can do with data, the way technology can help you? Just a little, I'm just tempted to ask this question. Where do you think in India are we on this? And then, I would like to hear the rest of your thoughts.
Contrary to what a lot of people think, the technology adoption in India is quite aggressive and it's quite at a mature stage. If you look at what happened in India, most consumers skipped this entire revolution of being on a website or a web page and directly moved on to mobile applications, right? If you look at it, and I think in the last, about a month back, even the Prime Minister said that we have over 500 million people today having access to an internet through their mobile phones, and there are 500 million more who are going to be having that access, right? What's really helped is the cost of internet is quite low in India against all other perceptions. It's still very low when compared to other different countries. And Indians are fairly digitally literate. Where things probably they want or they expect a better experience is on user experience, right? As what Shweta and Raveesh were mentioning. And what drives user experience is consistency. It doesn't, I mean, think about it. When I was asking my father to go ahead and do a banking transaction on a mobile app, if once he gets a confirmation in 10 seconds versus getting a confirmation in 30 seconds, he gets worried as to what happened. So the consistency of that experience matters a lot more. As far as security, regulatory requirements, data residency, everything else is concerned, that's for us as either technologists or as service providers like Sanjay, or for banking veterans like Shweta and Raveesh to actually look at how do you drive that trust with a customer, right? And that comes out of your brand, that comes out of your efforts, and so on and so forth. But what really matters to a consumer at the end of the day is the consistency of performance. They should know that when I actually log into a mobile application and try to do a transaction, it's going to have success in a X period of time, and that should be fairly consistent. And that's what most of the other fintechs are trying towards getting at. And a lot of banks are now beginning to actually also look at how do we drive this consistency of performance as any consumer would get if they were to go to a physical branch.
Okay, that's quite interesting, and I think, like you touched slightly upon that, the entire data regulation part. While I wouldn't like to deep dive into it, I mean, there are enough people all over the world who are pondering over this very big part about data privacy and data issues. But do you think, like, I mean, as consumer researcher, I always feel the more you know about the consumer, the better. The more information you have, the better. But do you think any kind of geo data regulations and all slightly hamper the process, like say for a Raveesh or this one, knowing across, let's say the South Asia region, and knowing how different consumers are reacting and being able to segment them, therefore. So how do you see that? How do you make that challenge?
Definitely. I think data regulatory requirements and concerns is not just the top priority of an IT organization or a chief security officer. It's pretty much the number one question that we get asked across even business decision makers, right? And especially with banks who probably operate across different geographies. Coming back to India, I think one of the game-changing things that happened about a couple of years back is the IDRBT report, which came, which talked about how cloud drives a certain amount of security and a better security many a time. Because at the end of the day, and it's not just AWS, any cloud provider at the end of the day has to adhere to RBI regulatory requirements on a very stringent basis. The stringent of audits are done, and basically those reports are reviewed and immediately remediated for any findings. At the same time, I think what as AWS we are trying to do is basically we have given a user guide for banks. It's a white paper. It's AWS user guide for banks, and that very detailed gives what do you look out for, what does the RBI regulations talk about, what do the IDRBT guidelines talk about, what does the Gopal Krishnan committee talk about, and how do you actually achieve that on a cloud setup. So these are important. And like I said, at the end of the day, this is important to drive the trust. But finally, when it comes to consistency of engagement, that's for service providers like Sanjay and marketeers like Raveesh and Shweta to actually figure out what's the best methodology of driving that experience.
So on that thought, Raveesh and Shweta, I think there's a very interesting thing that now has been built in the discussion. We've, started from the consumer and then understood from Sanjay how service providers are helping banks and other sectors leverage that entire technology trend. And very nicely, Praveen has also helped us understand where India is at this right now and the challenges with data. But I think I just wanted to understand from you both at that very thought, in fact, that how do you deal with those different segments and how do you deal with the entire hyper personalization that is possible for consumers in today's day and age? And the whole trend now is the segment of one, really. They say that if you can really come down to that one consumer, like Sanjay mentioned on his app, and be able to target him effectively, you've got a good strategy. Yeah. So how do you tackle something like that, Raveesh?
So, see, in terms of at least, I think consumers, by the way, again, it depends on segments to segments. I think a lot of them don't mind brands knowing them better, whereas some of them will be very concerned about the privacy. I think the good part is that the government here, at least the way regulations and RBI have come into picture, is that people are very, very sensitive about PII, right? That's personally identifiable information, right? So you, even if your characteristics might be, banks might want to understand that better, but everything is masked at the back end, right? So you don't know, by the way, that this user that we are talking about is Raveesh or is Shweta. So we'll know that this is user X. So nowadays, at least what banks have started doing over a period of time, and not just banks, right? I think we learned from the e-commerce and the different players who are farther ahead in the game, whether it's the Ubers of the world. It's how do you work on different user personas, right? I think that's what is more important. You break down your entire user segment into different personas, and then you try and market it to that particular user persona, because some user persona might be interested in the OTT platform, some user persona might be interested in essentials delivery, or somebody might be interested in travel category. So depending on the user personas, your marketing has to be attuned to that, right? I think that's the world that we are living in, and people want, by the way, very, very contextual offers for them. They want their brands to know them better without knowing, without getting into the privacy details. They don't want their data to be out there, but they want their brands to know them better slightly, right? So that I don't want 100 emails in my inbox targeting me on 1,000 different products. But if I'm concerned about, for example, sports as a category, I do want my brand to actually give me a very targeted offer around sports, right? So why not? I think that is the genesis of it. And I think from a user expectation point of view, I think there are two things which are important. We are living in a world where the user is in a world called always on. So they want, even if the branch hours are closed, etc., they want their brands to be able to. They should be able to interact with their brand. So we are in an always on digital world where we can't live in a 9 to 5 sort of an environment or a 9 to 6 sort of an environment. We need to give all the provisions, all the options to the user to interact with the brand. I think that's the world that we are in. And the other aspect, right, is the user when they are interacting with the brand, right, and the expectation where it is that they don't want any. So they also want something called a no context lost, right? So they don't want any context that, for example, I've had in the physical channel. They want, if they're talking to the call center, that context to be present over there.
Yeah, so on that thought, Raveesh, sorry, I'll just take Shweta's perspective also on this, because you just brought up a point which I've always wondered about. If you look at any of the OTT players, whether you are watching something on the phone and then you switch to the on the laptop, it's seamless. You just start off from where you finished. So Shweta, are you there?
Shweta?
Yeah. So Shweta, how do you manage something like what Raveesh said? He's brought out a very interesting point, which I think a lot of people expect. There are very high expectations from a user experience point of view on that wherever I left off on the app, I should be able to continue this on the laptop or any other device. What are your thoughts?
Aditi, the point to answer here is from the banking perspective, especially from State Bank of India side. Yes, we are in a evolution stage to get this kind of an data view of the customer right now, because we may have a transactional behavior, we may have psychographics to a certain extent, but still, like, we have to put this in a single view format and then understand, as Raveesh highlighted, what does a persona evolve. But I just want to take a step back, and I just want to refer to Sanjay's and Praveen's what they've said, that about the technology and the privacy thing. We need to first understand the Indian consists of two set of customers. If you look at a broad area, one is a non-inclusive area, which only considers around 15-20% of the total population, and the major chunk of the population which sits in the inclusive area. Now, when you talk about inclusive area, the ones who are not been exposed to such an advancement of what we are discussing or what we want to achieve. What we always live with, we only live within the arena of the those 15 to 20% of population only. Now, if we really want to make an impact in the market and we really want to create a single view of the customer, we want to bring about the technology and integrate the whole thing, is we need to reach out to those 80% of the population, which of which major of them are still not under the banking arena because of the KYC issues. So many of them are not, don't even have a smartphone. They're still surviving on a feature phones. So to reach to them is only a mechanism either through my branches, is through the BCs. Now, if I have to start percolating all those data down into my system, then is what we can create. What does my customer looks like? And then the insight what we can get from customer is going to be very huge. So that is what we are aiming for, and that is what we're working towards. That we'll try to bring even this inclusive segment under digital arena and try to understand them what exactly they look for. What are their requirements for? Are they really looking for something which we are trying to sell them, or they have some other expectation which they are not able to explain to us? So there is a need. What we see is explicit needs and implicit needs. Correct. So that is what we are working and gunning for.
Well, that's very nice to hear, Shweta, because like everyone on the panel has been saying, and we all tend to believe that definitely technology has its benefits and all, but there is still a large set of consumers, like you mentioned, who still are trying to be taught or trying to be trained and get onto this bandwagon of technology and get themselves onto this whole thing. So very rightly put, I think. And I think there are some poll questions here, and I think what we're really getting to know as a challenge that everyone's writing. Sanjay, could I have your perspective on this? Everyone, most of the attendees feel that getting a unified view, like taking off from what Shweta said, getting a unified view of the user is one of the biggest challenges. So what are your thoughts on that? How can providers or banks or brands really overcome that challenge, given that you specialize in those things?
Thanks for that question, Aditi. And this kind of, I think so. What I would like to answer will kind of summarize around what we all have been discussing, like what you was, what Shweta said, what Raveesh said, and Raveesh also said one point: consistency of where you left. So this will happen only when you're having your, the data in place, where you're able to, get all those events captured in one place. Now, events can be digital. That's where a balance is very important. Now, digital, as Raveesh was saying, it can be website, it can be net banking, it can be mobile app, and the other part, which Shweta is saying, it can be, a face-to-face interaction in a branch, or a face-to-face interaction maybe with a call center team, or telephonic interaction with the call center team, or with the sales team. How am I able to capture all this information? One is real-time event capture, and second is event capturing where the data has been provided offline. But am I able to convert that into some digital format, bring that in one place? The second aspect to that, in fact, going back to the poll question where people spoke about the second most, highest percentage, 24% was cross-channel automation, cross-channel automation. But frankly speaking, the second answer was also relevant. The second point, which was segmentation, because the moment you're able to make this 360-degree view of getting data as soon as possible or as real time as possible, how am I able to segment it? and then decide to reach back, reach back through this cross-channel marketing. I think so that's what we can say is how the technology is ready to consume as much as possible direct information directly from the event capture through the website, through mobile app, through other digital footprints, or consume information through the servers, through the APIs, and then bring it in one place, ready to be segmented, and then do cross-channel marketing.
Okay, thanks, Sanjay. That was a good perspective you gave us. Praveen, you have any thoughts on this, on cross-channel automation and how brands can manage that and getting a unified view of the consumer?
Yeah. So, so if I actually have to look at it, right, and this actually helps the least technology savvy customers adopt technology, because they feel that and Shweta kept mentioning that as a very important, that human touch point, because people visit a bank branch because they believe that the person over there has a context to that person, to us, and they know what is expected next. Now, if you can deliver a similar such experience through a digital format, then people get that aspect that there is somebody who knows us. It could be your mobile application, but it knows you, right? And which is where I said it's going to help accelerate adoption with the least technology savvy folks. But what goes on behind it, and obviously providers like Sanjay, this is the point that they are working on, is a fairly complex technology stack. It's going to be a massive data lake. It's going to be a large amount of analytics and machine learning and so on and so forth. And if I look back about 10 years, 12 years, no one single bank or no one single company would have had the kind of resources to manage this kind of a technology stack. And what cloud is sort of helping get there is the fact that it has democratized this technology stack to all banks, right? You don't necessarily have to invest in this massive infrastructures to drive this one project. You basically, at the end of the day, lease or rent out the infrastructure and drive it. So yes, I mean, this is the next generation. And I think if you actually go over to anywhere, be it an OTT platform or be it a shopping platform, it comes over and says, this is in your cart, or people who browse for this also browse for this, right? Those kind of things actually does matter.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Praveen. I think I think there's a good mix of hearing how technology can and has shaped BFSI. And at the same time, we're hearing from Raveesh and Shweta their actual everyday challenges with this. So Raveesh and Shweta, first Raveesh, if you could give us, your top 3 things that your challenges that you're battling with right now in terms of digital consumer behavior.
Yeah.
We'll take the last thoughts from everyone. So first we'll begin with Raveesh. Raveesh?
Yeah. So I think, the 3 topmost challenges would be able to, I think the things that I've mentioned, right? Able to provide that, that seamless experience to the consumer, because somewhere over a period of time and different organizations that I've seen, I think consumers want, that seamless experience across channels, whether it is branch, whether it is call center, whether it is an app, right? For them, it is one brand that they are interacting. I think that is like the biggest challenge that any organization faces, even if they have the full technology stack at the back end, because whether you are, architecturally you have configured it correctly, I think that's where the proof of the pudding lies in. I think that's, to me, that is the biggest challenge. Number 2 is ensuring that ensuring a unified. So one is the seamless experience. Number 2 is a unified customer. So basically, from a servicing perspective, right? So unified customer servicing and experience on that, because it is in a world where we have branches, by the way, over. So we have a particular subsidiary which actually has outlets in 120,000 villages, right? Okay. That's the kind of extent that we have to cities where we are present in, to digital channel. How do you ensure that the customer is given the same kind of servicing standard as well? Because you can provide a certain extent, and this is, Shweta had rightly said, right, that you read the physical touch at some point. You can provide a lot of things digitally, but the proof of the pudding, right, is out there when you move from that digital medium where customer is suddenly very comfortable, but he's not able to solve that one query, and then he moves to the physical world. Now, how do you ensure that the customer who's used to certain things done in a jiffy in a digital world is also able to ensure that, how are you able to manage the customer's expectation in the physical world? I think that's the second challenge that we face. And I think the third is that, technology is changing rapidly, and how do we also stay relevant and ensure that we provide the right set of tools and technology, whether it is in the urban sector or whether it is a rural side, because at least I feel the rural India is changing very fast. And WhatsApp as a medium has, at least, I am seeing it, the consumers interacting, whether they might not know how to operate a mobile app, but they definitely know how to use an effective. So how do you stay relevant in this technology era?
Okay, thanks, Raveesh. So, Shweta, on one of the points that Raveesh mentioned, in fact, that one of the challenges they face is, what if digital doesn't work, and then the consumer reverts back to physical. So, have you had any such lessons where some engagement worked for you, didn't work for you, and you felt that, okay, this was a big lesson for us? Shweta?
Yes, Aditi, I think being now set up, being one of the largest bank, and we do face these sort of challenges almost on daily basis. Almost daily, because mostly my social media queries, my calls and queries are filled with this, that I'm trying to log in particular app and it's not taking my PIN number, it's not taking my passwords, or the net is down. Something or other keeps challenging. So I have to come to physical worlds, branches, machines at times are not working, or people aren't responding. And the scenario in this, working with less staff. So these type of crops not only with in SBI, I think across every bank is facing a scenario. But one thing which I want to add from Ravish's take of what is happening physical and digital is what the biggest challenge, and I think many banks, including us, are working towards is how to integrate the offline world with the online world. What attempts also we're making that once a branch, the person enters into a branch, we know the person's before entering the branch, what could his needs be. Similarly, once he enters into a digital arena, what could his needs be. So this is one thing what definitely we are working towards. It's maybe a little longer process considering the Indian market, but this is what we are picking up. Second thing what we also are working towards is how to bring up a synergy between the technology and our objectives. Because if I move on from a banking BFSI space, I happen to work with retail and aviation sectors. There have been cases that you have a huge chunk of data, you have a technology, but you don't know how to bring about a synergy between the two, because you don't know what objective you want to try to achieve out of this. So first step is, what is your objective and how to bring about a synergy between the technology and your objectives, so that you can make the ends meet. And basis that, then what Ravish is trying to highlight about the user experience, then that gets into it.
Okay, so I think I'll take Sanjay's thoughts then on this. Like Shweta rightly said, and what I've also seen in my experiences, many a times brands tend to take the technology as given and then wrap their strategy around it, rather than first develop a strategy and then think of what technology can help them reach that strategy, right? So Sanjay, any of your would you like to give us some last perspectives or thoughts on this, since you have a sector agnostic view too?
Right.
Being the service provider.
I think the way I would like to summarize, these are last thoughts I have to say, is what we have seen recently, what has happened, right? Digital transformation has always been an endeavor, as you said, whichever be the sector. And there are questions that who's driving this? Is it the CMO who's driving this? Is it the CEO? Is it the ecosystem which is driving this? And now it was a very different C that has driven this. We all know, right? So, salute to people like Shweta, Raveesh, and all the marketers who have adopted to these changes and ensured that they try to do this omni-channel engagement and ensure that warmth is there, that engagement is being continued even in such a situation. So it is important that and as Shweta is saying, like once your objective is there in place, it's important that basis that objective, how do I have on the back end, as the other part which Ravish is saying, how do we have on the back end an agile infrastructure, a very flexible infrastructure which is able to help these marketers adapt to be able to revise this objective. Suddenly the objective is I should be able to inform everyone about moratorium, right? suddenly the objective is I should be able to provide them with more information about moratorium, what exactly it is, what are the benefits. Tomorrow it is something else. Tomorrow it is information about maybe the loans or the ease of the loans and those kind of things. Or I'm revising a new product now, right? So how can I be able to make avail this information in the right channel, in the right time. So these are the moments and times. And tomorrow we don't know what would be the new C. So am I ready for it? Is my backend again coming back? Is my backend able to consume this data? Understand this data, and again with that, I'm able to reach out with the right recommendation, with the right personal hyper personalized offers to them. So readiness on that, I think, is very key.
Okay. Okay, Praveen, any of your thoughts on all of this? We've spoken about technology, trends, Shweta and Raveesh have given their perspective, and Sanjay has also told us how. Would you like to give us any last thoughts on this?
Yeah. So I have always, in my experience, and we work across companies who build software for multiple different industry verticals, right? And one commonality we see is any transformation involves people, process, and technology, right? And usually at the end of the day, what we have noticed is technology has an ability to scale up very fast and change very fast. It's people and process that needs to be focused upon. So what is required, and that's actually a question of messaging, that's a question of earning trust, that's a question of delivering a consistent experience over and over and over again every day, right? Be it your consumer or be it your own employees and your own branch people. So I think what we see going forward, or at least what we are looking at going forward, is Indian banking is going to adopt this change in a big way. Like what Shweta talked about, I think maybe the point of transaction will still happen in a branch, but discoverability, knowing what they want to, people will come into that branch asking specific questions and then speaking with branch people and getting a transaction done. But you do not have to spend the kind of time and effort that was probably initially required in actually taking them through the discoverability process. There are much better, technology is going to address that space a lot more over the next coming years.
Okay. So I think Praveen has rightly said that across the customer journey, the part of the seek and the search is going to be taken over by technology, and maybe depending on the consumer segment, you would walk into the branch or you would purchase on the digital. Okay, so I think we've had a very nice and interesting discussion around consumer behavior, digital technology, what role technology can play, how can service providers help in leveraging that information which you get across different platforms, the challenges of having the unified view of the consumer. And I think it's been a very interesting thing, and seeing, like Praveen said, India is maybe at the forefront of it, or we're at the tipping point of what could propel banks into the next stage. So I think that's been nice. I would like to thank all the panelists. I think we have another poll. Divya? Divya?
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Aditi, for weaving together such a lively discussion. Thank you, panelists, for your contribution. We are receiving questions from the audience and we'll take them up in the Q&A session after this quick poll, as you mentioned. Well, for all our audiences here, it's time for another quick poll, requesting everybody to cast in your opinions. We look forward to your inputs. The poll will be up on your screens right now. Yes. Requesting everybody present to kindly cast in your inputs. And in case you'd like to address a few questions to our panel, you're more than welcome. Please type them in the Q&A box and we will pass them on to our moderators. Well, I guess it's time now to do the Q&A session. There is one question that is quite pertinent that we have sent across. If you could please take that.
The question says, actually, India media and e-commerce industry has benefited from competition, from global tech majors, and thus technology stack has got lifted. Indian BFSI does not have the same dynamics. What's the thinking on changing the DNA of the sector? I think what the user is trying to really ask is that So all the OTT players or India media and e-commerce had to evolve themselves to the level of technology which existed, what the players from outside brought in. How is that going to translate into the BFSI sector in India, where let's say the same has happened outside and India has to just evolve? So
Aditi,
this is.
I want to attend.
Shweta, is that you?
India is setting up example
sure.
for the global markets, especially when it comes to UPI.
Okay.
UPI today has become a case study in the global markets. How interoperability can happen, because UPI format is 4 banks. You're integrating 4 banks when making a payment. It's like a bank and a bank account, then a bank app, other bank's account, and another's bank app. So this has become a case study for the world markets to adopt this. And if you look at the UPI people, they are actually going out internationally and they're bringing this interoperability globally. So it's not only we adopting the global practices, even global countries are adopting Indian practices.
Okay, Shweta, nicely said. Nice to see you holding the bandwagon for the country. No, I think that's a good point there. But I think, Praveen, we have your perspective on this since you straddle both.
Oh, I'm completely in agreement with Shweta. I don't think we recognize enough or we appreciate enough how advanced Indian banking really is, and that too across over 1 billion people, right? It's not an easy, easy market. But definitely, I think from a scope for improvement perspective, I think we can all, I think Raveesh mentioned that portion best, right? How do you keep continuity of conversation? I think that's the key area to work towards. That's one area I think where we can actually do a lot more, but purely just in terms of reach, coverage, and ability to help people get onto banking, I think we have done wonders over the last decade or so.
Yeah. Okay. So Raveesh, would you also like to contribute to the India story and give your thoughts on this? Whether India is ahead or BFSI?
I'll have a slightly different view on this. I think it's always good to learn. I think it's very important to learn from the good work that is happening outside. And I always learn from examples, right? What the good work is happening across, right? And it's any organization will only get better by seeing the good work. I think I'll just break the problem down into, or the question down into 2 parts, right?
Okay.
Basically, if you take the banking world, there is a tech backend architecture and there is a front-end architecture, right? So, and the front-end customer-facing solutions, obviously, as well, right? So, where the innovation actually, where India has innovated, and the Indian banking and the financial space, right, and fintechs also, right, had innovated massively, is in the front-end customer-facing solutions, right? Whether it is UPI, which, by the way, UPI is going to be as big as MasterCard volumes, for example, sometime, as Shweta is saying, or Google Pay. By the way, Google Pay, so Tez, which became Google Pay, by the way, they have taken the same model back to US because they saw the innovations that were happening here. They were like, this is what we need to adopt back in the West, right? So the front, and even banks, right? For example, whether you take Yono, which is Shweta's bank itself, SBI Yono, it's a massive, like, the case study is amazing, right? Or whether you take innovations in my bank, right? We have things like my account, my number. So for example, if you want, right, you can actually, whatever number you want, you will be able to create a bank account of that number, right? That's the kind of innovations. So the front end innovations are something that are happening in the Indian market, and Western world is learning from that, right? And I completely agree. I think where we need to learn, and the good part is technology has become so fast, is on the back end side, whether it's the tech stack. So that is slightly more evolved across, and we are, at least banking is learning from it and adapting to it. And that's where we need to understand these things slightly even better and adopt to them. I think that's where I'll like to break the problem down. But yeah, I think innovation is what we are all doing, and but more on the front end side, more on the customer facing solution side, which is I've just described a couple of things.
Fine.
Back end, we need to learn. We need to learn a lot what is happening outside.
Okay. So Sanjay, your thoughts? We have now 3. It's almost it's a different perspective that all 3 of them have brought in. So what about you? What is your perspective? Is India high on the innovation? I think
Yeah,
Raveesh
yeah.
and Shweta have got a good perspective, and Praveen has given his technology perspective on it. What do you see as a service provider? Like, are brands and banks coming to you and saying that, let's innovate this, let's implement this?
See, I think so. The way I would like to put this, and I mean, like, we are fortunate to be in that part where we are, working with the likes of Big Baskets and Ola, and Flipkarts of the world to provide that experience. At the same time, as MoEngage, we are also working with global banks, be it Ally Bank, Meshreq Bank, CIMB, so all the global banks. But when I'm engaging with Indian banks, take my word, is the extent of use cases that they are working with, and if I start opening those spreadsheets, where, okay, I want this kind of use case, this kind of use case, and to ensure, so this use case is where Raveesh said that, at the front end side of it, we have really made those good technological change. But on the back end of those use case, the extent of data sciences that, banks are trying to put, the extent of the propensity modeling, the extent of predictability, predictive modeling, again predictive analytics, that they are trying to work with us. You cannot imagine. And sometimes in fact, most of the times I'm feeling we are way ahead, when it comes to use cases, and because of course we are really diversified in terms of customers, as we speak of inclusive, non-inclusive, and those kind of things, we are very diversified, which kind of throws open a huge challenge to the marketers to think of how I can apply data science, how I can apply AI, how I can do, all this analytics to be able to, get the best recommendation, to get the, next best offers, to get the next, best, most recommended product. So this is one aspect of it. So definitely Indian banks, Indian financial organizations are way ahead when it comes to, and of course, learning is always a part of it. And second is, I think so it's more generic. Come on, we all know when we get those notifications and SMSs that, 10% cash back, get, 5%. And so, with all due respect to Pratik, but we all know that, the benefits are definitely, consumers are getting the benefits from BFSI also, when we go back and do all our, financial transactions, utility payments, or be it, consumer buying, we are definitely getting those benefits thanks to the banks who are continuously, working hard in, bringing those kind of offers, co-branding, and ensuring that, they're bringing those offers in front of our eyeballs, for us to view and action upon.
Okay. Divya, is there any other question from the audience?
That's about it, Aditi, from our side.
Okay, great. So would you?
Yes. So I'd like to thank you, Aditi, for really helping address so many queries that our attendees may have had during the discussion. And thank you to all our panelists who shared their valuable inputs and truly gave return on investment for the time spent by our attendees on this virtual conference today. Well, truly valuable takeaways from this session. It's been a great, amazing panel discussion. Today's session wouldn't have been a success without the active participation of all our esteemed speakers and delegates. I would like to thank each one of you for taking the time out and being a part of this virtual conference. A special thanks to our partners, AWS and MoEngage, for their support to this initiative, without whom this conference, of course, wouldn't have been possible. Thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.